Welcome back. All right, so I've done power rankings before of Stanley Cup expectations. I did it in 2018. September 6th of 2018, I ranked Toronto as number one, having the most pressure to win a Stanley Cup. Spoiler alert, they didn't. October 9th of 2020, I did this power rankings again. I put Vegas at first. They did not win either. August 7th of 2021, I gave Colorado the nod as the number one team with the most pressure to win a Stanley Cup. And they did. So, 1 out of 3 is not bad. Better than the President's Trophy. So, it's not a jinx. And, so we're going to talk about it again. The most pressure to win this. I mean, it's a tiny version. This isn't exactly to scale, but it's the Stanley Cup. And, of course, during the playoffs, I put my Stanley Cups up there. And, who's going to win it? That's a whole other discussion. But that pressure to win the Stanley Cup is different in each market. The expectations. I've talked about expectations, playoff likelihoods, all that during the summer. And so I want to do this looking back as well at the rankings I've done previously. So number 32 on the board, same spot they were last year. So in terms of where they've been standing in the three lists from 2018, 2020, and 2021, many apologies to 2019. I didn't do it that year. I can't go back in time and do it now. I've tried. I can't go back in time. So they were 27th the first time I did this, 23rd the second time I did it, and they were 32nd last summer. They're 32nd now too. The expectations in Arizona are we're rebuilding, and we'll let you know when we're done with the rebuilding. They're nowhere near done with the rebuilding. They don't have their own building right now. They're borrowing ASU's, so definitely the word building comes up quite a lot with Arizona. If rebuilding, I guess, sure, building and rebuilding. Yeah, all right. And they've been in this state for a while. Hopefully they come out of it in time for a brand new arena and everything works out really well. Number 31 on the board, dropping from 13 last year. So Chicago's an interesting one. The Chicago Blackhawks were 24th. They were 25th. Last year's I had them at 13th. Why? Because they picked up Seth Jones at the expense of futures and cap space. They also picked up Marc-Andre Fleury. They put themselves up against the cap, and they made it clear that they envisioned themselves as a playoff team. And that this also, it felt like, was a way to, show Taves and Kane that, they were serious about trying to keep things together and trying to get back into the playoffs. And it just didn't work out. So I've dropped Chicago down because now almost everybody's gone, except Taves and Kane. They're still there, and so we'll see how much longer either of them or both of them are still there. Chicago, 31st on this one. I'm wearing Kansas City because, apparently the New Jersey Devils throwback is going to be exactly this, just with the Devils logo on the front with this kind of color scheme. It's going to be a blue New Jersey Devil logo, apparently. And also because I don't think Kansas City's winning the Cup this year. I know, bold predictions. Number 30, dropping quite a bit from where they were last year, is Montreal. So Montreal, also in a rebuild. On this countdown, they've been 19th, then 16th, and then back down to 19th. And last year I had them at 19th because without Carey Price, without Shea Weber, we knew there would be some struggles. And they were a team that had won 24 out of 56 games the year before. Now, full-on rebuild. These are the three teams that are looking at the 2023 draft and salivating over top prospects in that draft. Not just Bedard, there are others. And so we have Montreal, I have at 30th. 29th, and quite the drop for Philadelphia, too. Philadelphia's been a little bit all over the place. 21st, the first time I did this. 6th, when I did it October 9th of 2020, because they were coming out of a 2019-2020 season that was pretty good. And then last year when I did this, they were 22nd. Now they're 29th after what was a disastrous season. Now they've added Tortorella, they've added D'Angelo. They're trying to turn things around, but the pressure to win a Stanley Cup, I don't see it. I definitely don't see it from the fans. I don't see it from the media. I don't think there's any pressure there. If they get anywhere near the playoffs, I think that'll be viewed as a success. Although, and I say it that way, although with this draft being as good as it is, if Philadelphia is good enough to avoid getting those top prospects, that may not be something that Flyers fans will be all that excited about. Number 28, dropping from 24 last year, is Seattle. And I had Seattle at 24th last year because there was that whole Vegas effect, right? The expectation that an expansion team in this era is going to be good. Now, being 24th on the board means I was acknowledging they're not likely to make the playoffs, and if they do, the pressure to win a Stanley Cup isn't there, but I still had them ahead of other teams. Now I've dropped them down to 28th after what was a rough first season, and the expectations, I think, while they weren't that high going into year one, I think they've dropped a little bit going into year two from where they were going into year one. So Seattle, 28th on the board. 27th, Anaheim. Anaheim's moving up a bit. So Anaheim, the first time I did this, they were 9th. They dropped to 28th when I did this in 2020. They were 31st the last time I did this. So they've moved up from 31st to 27th because they've started getting their kids into the lineup. These top prospects have started coming in, and they've made some tough choices. Moving on from Sam Steele as an example. Sonny Milano's an example. And we'll see whether or not those moves were good ones. It will be interesting to see how things turn out for Anaheim this year. John Gibson's still there. Despite all the rumors and everything else, Gibson is still there. So, yeah, Anaheim, I'm moving them up to 27th. 26th, and moving around a lot, but not ending up in a position where there really is a lot of pressure, and I'm putting Buffalo in this spot. So the first 3 times I did this, Buffalo was 23rd, then 24th, and then dropped to 30th. Now they're back up to 26th. Good finish to the season. The Eichel trade, having that happen and having that out of the way, I think was a big relief for the team and for the organization. And so we'll see with Buffalo how this season goes. A lot of it, I think, is going to come down to the goaltending and the blue line and how well they keep the puck out of the net, because their attack looks pretty good. But yeah, for Buffalo, I think there's got to be at least some optimism, but cut pressure, not yet. Number 25 on the board, moving down a little bit from where I had them last year, is New Jersey. New Jersey, the first time that I did this, were 18th. They dropped to 27th. They moved up to 23rd. Now they're down to 25th. When they brought in Dougie Hamilton, I moved them up as a result. I felt like, Mackenzie Blackwood, good young goaltender, and they brought in Dougie Hamilton. But then the goaltending was a disaster this past season. There were injuries galore. Bernier is a good example of an injury that really handicapped their net. And, of course, Dougie Hamilton missed a quarter of the season as well. And a lot of the teams down here, injuries were a major issue for them. But, yeah, New Jersey, it was a big deal. And I feel like the expectations have dropped a little bit, even though the team is probably going to be better than they were last year. Number 24... and moving up from where they were last time, is Ottawa. Yes, Ottawa is up this far. The expectations, I think, are a little bit higher. Although, again, in terms of Stanley Cup pressure, saying, well, our team's the 24th, got the 24th most pressure. Anyways, they were 26th, then they dropped to 30th, and then they were back up to 27th last year. So 24th is the highest they've been in any of the 4 of these that I've done. I did not do one of these in 2016 or 2017, when they likely would have been top 10. I would think that 2017 is an example, they probably would have been top 10, because you've got to sign guys and there's a lot of veterans that, contracts were coming due and all that. Ottawa, of course, goes into the rebuild. It feels like they're ready to come out of it. I would expect next year they'll be in the top 16, or at least top 20. Top 20, sure. Number 23, moving up quite a bit from where they've been. The first time I did this, they were 30th. The second time I did this, they were 31st. The third time, they were 29th. Now the Detroit Red Wings are 23rd. And again, it's one of those, a lot of the kids that they've been drafting are coming into the lineup or already have. Edvinsson should be coming in. Moritz Seider was a huge hit. Raymond was very good. The goaltending was I thought, better than it was given credit for. And so, yeah, for Detroit, there's a lot of reason to look at this team and say, this could be a year that they make a bit of a jump. Whether that means playoffs or not is a whole other discussion, but for Detroit, at least now we look at them and they're relevant and they're a good team and they should be entertaining to watch. I can't wait to see Mickey Redmond calling games now where Detroit's actually pretty good. That I think is a good thing right there, because Mickey, it's been a tough few years for Mickey Redmond. It really has. Number 22. And this is a team that moves around a lot too, is San Jose. San Jose is tough to read because management tells us that they feel they're going to be back in the playoffs and they're going to be back in the hunt. But they haven't been a playoff team for a while now. The first time I did this, they were 10th on the board. They dropped to 22nd. Then they dropped to 28th last year. Now they're back up to 22nd. And again, for San Jose, it really feels like they should be going into some sort of rebuild that they're resisting. And I guess I understand that resistance on some level, but I don't think they're doing themselves any favors with this. We'll see if any rookies step in and make a big difference, and maybe San Jose is going to surprise us, but at this point, I don't have them with a lot of cup pressure. Number 21, huge drop for the New York Islanders. The New York Islanders' new coach, coming off of a rough year, expectations for a cup aren't that high. They moved up from 31st the first time I did this to 11th the second time, and then 6th last year. So they've dropped from 6th to 21st. And I went back and forth on between 21 and 17 and kind of messed with it a little bit while I was putting this video together because I felt like, yeah, the Islanders should be at 21st. 20th. And I went back and forth on this one too. Columbus. The Columbus Blue Jackets. Adding Johnny Gaudreau. Good move, I think. Anyways, and so this is a matter of, are they going to be that much better with Johnny Hockey? Are they going to be back in challenging for the playoffs? Columbus were 12th. Both of the first two times I did a cup pressure power ranking, they were 26th last year when I did this. So they've moved back up to 20th. They're within shouting distance of as high as they got on this board. Well, not on this board. I never did on this board. So within shouting distance of 12th, when you think about just how quickly a team could potentially move up or move down based on moves they make or based on the start. They get off to a really good start, all of a sudden that pressure moves up, right? Number 19. This is a team that's really gone backwards, and that's Winnipeg. Coming off of a disappointing season, and they haven't really made any big changes other than Bonus is going to be the coach. They lose Stastny to Carolina. We'll see how things go. I think the loss of Stastny, while that hurts, Stastny's also 36 years of age. At some point, players do tend to trail off in their production. And so maybe Winnipeg looked at that and said, nah. But either way, Winnipeg is a team that there is some pressure, but I don't feel like it's Stanley Cup pressure. They were second the first time that I did this power ranking. They dropped to 15th the second time, and they were up to 12th. Now they're down to 19th. So this is the lowest that they've been. And yeah, in 2018, they were second because that was an excellent team coming off of a nice run in the 2018 playoffs. And then they weren't able to follow that up. Number 18, moving up from last year and moving back into contention is LA. Now, LA made the playoffs, but this is about Stanley Cup pressure. Stanley Cup pressure is a little bit different. So I'm okay with LA being outside the top 16 because I feel like they've still got so many young players coming in and developing that the Stanley Cup playoffs are fun and they made it, but an actual championship, I don't think that's the concern right now. It's about just getting better and seeing that improvement. If they win a cup, great. You'll never see a team say, we don't think we're ready for that. We're going to hand the trophy off to the guys that lost to us. So they were 7th the first time I did a power rankings like this. They were 29th in 2020. They were 25th last year. Now they're back up to 18th. So they have moved back up, but not as much as people might expect. 17. And I went back and forth on Vancouver. The Vancouver Canucks, how much pressure is there on the Vancouver Canucks to win a Stanley Cup? It really depends. I don't feel like there's a lot of pressure. I think in Vancouver, if they make the playoffs this year, fans will be happy. I think if they see that progression, Podkolzin turns it around a bit, and they make the playoffs, I think fans will be happy. The Vancouver Canucks were 29th the first time I did this, moved up to 13th in 2020, and dropped back to 17th last year. And that's where I have them this year as well. So I have about the same expectations for the Canucks. And if they end up making the playoffs, will that pressure go up to win a Stanley Cup? Maybe. But remember, you're looking at a guy who thinks the Vancouver Canucks will not win a cup in his lifetime. So there's that. That's the one thing. And I say that just because I've been watching them for 2 life sentences so far, and they haven't won anything yet. So, once you get past that 40-year mark, that second life sentence, it gets a bit tiring. Number 16. Moving up from where they were last year is Nashville. Nashville, I feel like the expectations, the pressure's gone up a little bit. I think the pressure's gone up a bit for them because they did bring back Forsberg and they had a setback in the playoffs, but largely return with most of their players still on the roster. Nashville, fourth. The first time that I did this, again, much like Winnipeg coming off of a fantastic season, then it dropped down to 17th the second time I did this, and 20th last year when I did this. So they moved from 20th up to 16. Then at 15, as we get into the third row on the board, dropping from last year's Dallas. I'm really kind of torn on Dallas because, like, is there cup pressure? Yes, because Sagan and Ben are getting older and their contracts are they are what they are. But you've got some really good young players here too, and I don't know how much expectation, which would lead to more pressure, there is for Dallas to actually win a Stanley Cup, even though they were in the final in 2020. So for Dallas, they were 15th the first time I did this. They were 8th the second time I did this because that was coming out of that Stanley Cup Finals appearance. Last year, I dropped Dallas down to 14th. Even though they missed the playoffs, I still had them top 16. And this year I've dropped them to 15th. So for Dallas, I guess that's right about the right spot. We're a year apart. I have them one spot off from where they were last year. Number 14. And this one I went back and forth on too, and that's Tampa. Now, usually when a team has won a Stanley Cup that recently, I'll drop them. But in Tampa's case, I really haven't. So the first time I did this, Tampa Bay was third because they haven't won a Stanley Cup yet. That was 2018. At least that core. They'd won the Cup in 2004, of course. They dropped to 26th in 2020 because they won the Cup. And then last year, they were 16th because they'd won the Cup twice and they were going for 3 in a row. I have them at 14th this year because if they win a third Cup in 4 years, plus end up in their 4th Stanley Cup final in a row, they're a dynasty. Now, the argument that they're already a dynasty is out there, and I understand that. And on some level, as a modern dynasty, maybe we change the whole idea of what a dynasty is. But yeah, if they won that third Stanley Cup in 4 years, that'd be huge. And by huge, I mean also for those players for their next contracts, because you're going to get seriously paid if you win 3 cups in 4 years and you're a key part of any of those cups. You're going to get paid. So Tampa Bay, I think the pressure's still there. Number 13, and they've dropped quite a bit, is Boston. I went back and forth on Boston too. So their expectations, I don't think are that high because they don't have McAvoy, they don't have Marchand. They've brought back Krejci. We don't know how Krejci's going to perform. And with Krejci and Bergeron down the middle, that's an old center spot right there for 1, 2, and then you got Coyle as likely the third line center. I don't think the expectations are for a Stanley Cup, though. I don't think the pressure's there for a Stanley Cup for this Bruins team. I may be wrong. They've been top 10 each of the 3 times I did this list before this. They were 8th the first time, and they were 5th both the second and third time that I did this. And I just don't see that pressure there because of the amount of injuries. Rask's retired, so you've got Ullmark and Swayman, who are both good goaltenders, but no Stanley Cup acumen there. Like, no, it just feels like the Boston Bruins are kind of in a state of flux, and we could see them end up dropping out of the playoffs. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if that happened this year. But for Boston, and again, that's partly because there's the big injuries to start the season. But for Boston, it's been the last couple of years, again, pretty good the regular season, and then in the playoffs, they have their struggles. Number 12, I kind of went back and forth on this one a bit too. St. Louis, the St. Louis Blues, right? So St. Louis was 14th the first time I did this in 2018, and then they won the Cup in 2019, which means they dropped to 18th in the 2021 because that was a year after they won the Stanley Cup. And then they were 11th last year. I've dropped them down to 12th, so they're right around the same spot. Losing Perron might hurt a little bit, but still. The pressure's going to be there, and what, to me, amps up the pressure a little bit, this is Ryan O'Reilly's contract year. So you kind of got to go out and take this seriously, and A, you're trying to win him over to keep him there, and B, you want to make sure you go out there and win. Because not only would that keep him around, but then in the instance that he left, you could say, hey, we got 2 Stanley Cup rings with him. We're good. Number 11. And whenever I do this, Minnesota fans say, no, we should be higher. The pressure to win a championship for every Minnesota team is relatively high, even if they're not very good, because Minnesota does not win championships in professional sports. And this is too bad, whether it's the Twins, whether it's the Vikings. You got the Wild. It is just something that has been a problem. The Timberwolves are another good example of that too. The Minnesota Wild have some pressure. They've moved up quite a bit. They were 16th the first time I did this, 19th the second, and last year I had them at 21st. This year I moved them up to 11th because it's Kaprizov's third year, and really it looks like the sky's the limit for him. Now it's up to the team around him to perform. They have Marc-Andre Fleury. Maybe it's the Fleury effect. Chicago gets dragged up to 13th last year with Fleury. This year Minnesota's at 11th, but there is some pressure for this team to win a Stanley Cup. Number 10, Colorado. So again, normally when a team wins the Stanley Cup, I would drop them right down to like here. Like there's no pressure from the win. But I do think that Colorado will have some pressure to win a second in a row. They've never done it. They've made it clear since they held up that Stanley Cup they want to go back and do it again. Nathan McKinnon's in a contract year. So, yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things where you want to keep it together. You want to win another championship. We'll see what happens there. In terms of power rankings, they were 20th the first time I did this, and then things got better. They were second 2 years ago, and they were first a year ago when I did this. So they've moved up, and now they've moved down because they won a championship. But you still want that second in a row if you're Colorado, because you don't know how long that window's going to be open. A lot of guys are going to get paid. Looking at you, Bowen Byram. And once these guys start getting paid what they should, it's going to be tough to keep it all together. Number 9, moving up quite a bit, the New York Rangers. The Rangers, the rebuild is done, all finished, and so now it's all about winning a championship, or at least trying to get there and win that championship. The New York Rangers were 25th the first time I did this, and that's when they were going into that rebuild. 21st the second time I did this in 2020, and last year I had them at 15th, so I felt like the pressure was on, and now I have them at 9th. The pressure's there. Shesterkin has shown he is a playoff goaltender, arguably the best goaltender in the league. We'll see how it works out this year, because between Vasilevsky and Shesterkin, that should be a tremendous competition between the two. Vasilevsky's very competitive. I don't think he'd be happy to hear people saying, well, the best goalie is Shesterkin. He'll go out and get 4 or 5 shutouts in a row just to make that noise go away. But yeah, I have the Rangers at 9. They did get to the Final Four. They broke my bracket. They were the only team that broke my bracket, but I forgive them. Number 8. And this is right around where they are every year, is the Washington Capitals. It really is about Ovechkin. It really is about that pressure to get that last Stanley Cup. Now, one thing that definitely doesn't help Washington is that Backstrom had the hip surgery, will miss the start of the season, likely doesn't come back until about midway through the season. That's going to be tough. And honestly, while they've got Dylan Strome and he may succeed in Washington, he showed in Chicago with the right line mates it can absolutely work with him. But there's some concern with Washington. There's some expectation they could drop. They could be one of those teams that drops. However, the pressure to win the Stanley Cup's still there. They were 6th the first time that I did a ranking. They dropped to 10th 2 years ago, and they were 7th a year ago. Now they're 8th. So they're just hanging around in that same area really all the way through. Each of the 4, they'd be in this row. Number 7, I went back and forth on this one too, and that's the Calgary Flames. Calgary, in losing Gaudreau and Tkachuk, should have been down here. If they don't replace Gaudreau and Tkachuk, we're down here. But they replace at least one of them with the addition of Huberdeau. And I see Huberdeau as a replacement for Gaudreau, even though they traded Tkachuk for him. They pick up Weegar on the blue line. And honestly, then they go out and get Kadri. I think the expectations for Calgary are a heck of a lot higher now than they were during that dark time after Johnny Gaudreau left, which it feels like was about 6 years ago. But yeah, I have them at number 7 in terms of their ranking. They were 13th when I did this 4 years ago, 7th 2 years ago, and 18th last year when I did this. They were coming off of a miss of the playoffs altogether. Didn't feel like there was a lot of pressure, and now there is. Even though that was a contract year for Gaudreau, I look back at that power ranking and I say maybe Calgary should have been a little bit higher, but again, they missed the playoffs. So number 6, missed the playoffs the year before. Number 6, the Oilers. The Oilers have gone back and forth on it. What's interesting is the Oilers actually dropped from last year in terms of pressure. The Oilers were 11th the first time I did this, and then the second and third power rankings I did of Stanley Cup pressure, I had them at 4th. So I've actually dropped them to 6th, which means that a couple of teams have passed them. And we'll see how the Oilers do this year. That Final Four appearance is huge, and it'll be nice if they can get back there again. That's the trick. They have to get back there again. I do think the pressure is there. I just don't have them in the top row. I feel like, no, the pressure I don't think is as high as it is on these other 5 teams. But it's still there. If Evander Kane behaves and gets to the 40-goal mark, this could be a very good season for Edmonton indeed. And, of course, Jack Campbell has to come through for them as well. I've seen some criticism of Campbell. I've seen praise of Campbell. I'm right in the middle on that. I think Campbell can be a good goaltender as long as you don't overplay him. I don't know if he's top 10 in the league, but I think he can be very good. Number 5. And this team drops from where they were last year. Vegas still has pressure. So what's interesting is Vegas was not a playoff team this past year. They miss out that last week. They just couldn't win in a shootout. And they had all the injuries they were dealing with too. And so back this year, and you have to think if they're healthy, if Eichel is back to being Eichel, well, either way, Vegas has the pressure, right? They're an older team for the most part. And even though Leonard isn't playing this year, I still think the pressure's there. So hopefully Logan Thompson can take the net, play about 50 games. I don't see Brossoit as a guy who can play 50 games. I think he's a backup at the NHL level, but we shall see. But yeah, Vegas drops. The first year I did this, 2018, I had them at 17th because, that was after their magical run to the final. I didn't feel like they had a lot of pressure. However, the last 2 times I did this, they were actually number 1 when I did this 2 years ago. They were number 2 when I did this a year ago. Their setback drops them back to 5, but to me, they're still in the top row. I think the pressure's still there. Number 4, and a big mover up the board, is Carolina. Carolina Hurricanes. We've got all kinds of regular season success. Great. Fantastic. Love the regular season success. Now they need to get to a conference final, get into a Stanley Cup final, and go from there, right? I do think the pressure's up now on Carolina. They've made some more changes in the offseason. We'll see how those changes work out for them. They were 20th the first time that I did a power rankings like this. They were 14th the second go around, and they were actually 8th when I did this last year. So this is the first time they've been as high as 4th. And yeah, the pressure's amped up. We'll see how they do with that extra pressure. Number 3, I'm going with Pittsburgh. This is the highest Pittsburgh's been. Keep in mind that they won the Cup in 2016 and 2017, so that would have affected their 2018 ranking. 2018, they were 5th, and then 2 years ago and a year ago, they were 9th on both of those countdowns. I have them at 3rd because it feels like they've re-signed Crosby. Well, not Crosby. They've re-signed Malkin. They've re-signed Letang. And you've got Crosby, Malkin, and Carter down the middle. It's a very good center spot. It's also an old center spot. And I think the pressure to win a Stanley Cup is the highest that I've seen it with the Penguins since they won the 2016 Cup, for example. And that 2016 team was one that had struggled in the playoffs, and they'd had some bad runs from Fleury along the way as well. And not a lot was expected necessarily with the 2016 team, and they won the Cup. So I do think the pressure's there because Crosby, 35 years of age, at some point, his play is going to tail off, and it's going to hurt the Penguins franchise. So we'll see what happens this year. And Jari's in a contract year. So I believe Jari's in a contract year. Pretty sure. Anyways, we'll see how Pittsburgh does. But I have them at 3rd. Number 2, moving up quite a bit from where they were last year, is Florida. The Florida Panthers, I don't think they've ever had pressure like this to win a Stanley Cup, but they won the first round, and here we are. They finally got out of the first round, first time since 1996. The first time I did a power rankings like this, they were 22nd. They moved up to 20th, and they moved up to 10th last year. So they've been steadily moving up. Now they're number 2. And really, in all honesty, it is a matter of them finding out how to play in the playoffs the way they do in the regular season. Or how to succeed in the playoffs. I should say how to succeed in the playoffs like they do in the regular season. The problem has been the game they play in October doesn't translate so well in April and May when you get into the playoff games. But now they've got Paul Maurice behind the bench. That may change things, as I said today in my season preview for the Florida Panthers. Which means number 1 is Toronto. Number 1's the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were number 1 the first time I did this in 2018. They were number 3, both the second and third time. I think with what we saw Calgary go through, I think I think that amps up a little bit of pressure. It may make things a little more real of, wow, you can really lose young guys who are keystones of your franchise as free agents. The concern about how long is left on the contracts of guys like Matthews and Marner is there, and I think this year I think that pressure's up. They've also made some changes in net that have been a bit of a head scratcher for most. Samsonov, though, is young. He could have a huge bounce back, and Murray is not old by any stretch as a goaltender either. So it'll be interesting to see how things work out with the Leafs, but I think they're under the most pressure to win a Stanley Cup this year. Their blue line looks good. Their forward group, I think, is solid. And their goaltending, that really could be the difference maker. That could be a huge surprise in the positive, or it could end up being a negative, but it is not going to be a boring ride. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And you know, something funny, while I was writing down all the numbers from the previous power rankings, and I was just going through the video and just, you know, okay, what do I have in what spot? There were a couple times I was yelling at myself to get out of the way because I was blocking out the board. So don't worry, guys. With this board like this, I don't block out the board. So, and it's something that I really try not to do when I do power rankings now. And so, yeah, so there you go. I raged at myself once already today. I feel like I could go to bed now. My day is done. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Like, I've peaked. I don't know that I can do anything. I've yelled at myself. I'm done. That's it. It's good. I didn't even need the entertainment guy to do it. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And again, there's no science to this really. It is just me looking at it and saying, I think this team has the most pressure to win a Stanley Cup this year. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Which team do you think has the most pressure? Which team do you think I have too low? And which one do you think is too high? There are no wrong answers. So let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe. I will talk to you again soon.